Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going over preparing for the listing appointment. If you're watching this, please feel free to email me and I will get you the printout. But what we're going to talk about today is the initial contact with them, whether that be a phone call or in a physical meeting. If you're going to run into them at the grocery store and they want to, oh, I want to list my house, can you come by and show me what you do? Try to set up a phone call and do it that way, and then once you sit down and you've got everything in front of you, then you can go through it professionally. But the questions I tend to ask them for that first initial phone call is, now remember, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Even though they might ask you, hey, I want to sell my house, can you show me everything? You might tell them stuff and then they might go to the next person as well just to see what you guys are doing and how you differ. So that's why you really have to prepare. We have some agents that are just like, oh, you want to sell your house? I'll come by this afternoon. And it's like, but you didn't even prepare. You didn't look at the comps. You didn't drive through the neighborhood. You didn't check to see what was actually going on. So even if it's a friend of yours, give yourself at least 24 hours to make them a proper CMA report and all of that. But you're going to control the flow of the conversation because it can get a little crazy and they just start throwing out questions and you're like this, I'm very structured, so you want to show them, okay, I have to ask you some questions first before we can kind of dive into everything. And then don't rush the pricing. Like they're like, how much do you think I can get for it? Well, let me go through all of this first and show you how we come up with that, and then we can figure out where we sit on the pricing. Because that's really all they care about is how fast do you think it's going to sell and what price are you going to set it at. And again, I never, ever, ever give a price in that initial meeting until they sign my documents. I give them a range, $50,000 to $60,000 range, because if I tell them, oh, I think $800,000, the next person should, oh, I have a realtor told me $800,000, what would you sell it for? They're going to say $830,000, $850,000, because they want to seem like they're doing it a little bit more for you and they can get them a better price. So you might have lost it. So I give them a range. But one of the questions I ask is, oh, how did you hear about me? If you don't know them and they just randomly call you, how did you hear about me? And then may I ask what they had to say? How, did they use me? How was their experience with me, interacting with me? And then I like to ask them, how long have you lived in the property? If it's a 25-year-old home and they just lived there 2 years and you see a lot of additions and like a room addition and a covered patio and maybe a pool and like who added all of that stuff? Was that the original owner or what, Now, if they are the original owner and you start seeing that stuff, great. So I see that you have added a shed or a casita, or do you have all the proper paperwork and permits for all of that stuff? You do want to ask if they have that. Sometimes it was here when I got here. Okay, well, I'm going to see your SRPD, Seller Real Property Disclosure Form. Hopefully you still have that from when you bought the home and see if they listed that on there. Then I love to ask them, why are you selling? What's the reason for you to sell? Because are they downsizing? Are they going up? Are they sick and going into assisted living? Are they moving out of state? And if they're moving out of state, I say, great, where are you moving to? Do you already have a realtor? I have some realtor partners in that state, in that area, and then try to get the exact area they're moving in, so maybe you can set them up with a referral. Like, I would love to set you up with one of my partners so they can take care of you just as well as I'm going to as well. And then you guys can get a referral on that end. You don't have to be licensed in every state. And I think a lot of realtors will get into this and they're like, okay, I'm gonna get licensed here first and then California and then Utah. Unless you know the area and you plan on working and living and traveling there every time, don't do all of that. Focus on your city, your state, and then just make referral partner friends everywhere else, and then they'll give you referral fees. And then ask them what their time frame is. If they're like, I have to be out of here in 30 days, my company's moving me, okay, so now you already know, and you have to be aggressive, with the pricing there. Like, we have to really think about how high we want to go if we need a quick sell. Again, motivation equals the pricing strategy. Time frame equals urgency. And then out of state is a referral opportunity, right? So if they are like, oh, you know what, at the end of the year, we're thinking about, okay, well, it's March. At the end of the year, a lot can change, so I'm just going to touch upon it. So now when you're doing your listing presentation, you're not going to go deep into everything about what's going on right this second. Just kind of skim over it. Right now, this is what's going on in the neighborhood. Last month, this is what had happened, so you can kind of see how that moved. but we don't care about what's gonna close in the next 2 weeks because you're looking 8 months down the road, right? So, do you have an idea? I love this question. Do you guys have an idea of what you'd like to sell your property for, or what they're selling for in the neighborhood? And then they're gonna tell you. So then now you know where they're at, and then when you give them the facts, if it's much lower, you know you're gonna have to justify why their price is too high and yours is spot on. So before I review the comps, what are your thoughts on the pricing? Because if they say, well, we know this one down the street sold for that, well, what are your thoughts on that? You know, like, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's too high? Do you think, like, oh, I didn't know we could get that much? Okay, so when I show you what the real comps are, remember when you thought you didn't think you can get that much? Because you can't. They're just overpriced over there. So you were right. They're a little high. They're just testing the water. But when you price higher, every time you reduce, you're less likely to get the price that you were wanting in the first place, right? Then once I ask them, before I review the comps, what are your thoughts on the pricing? I let them speak first. I don't go, okay, what are your thoughts on the pricing? Because this is what's going on in the neighborhood. I just say, what are your thoughts on the pricing? And then you wait. Sometimes, you know, less is more, and then the pause is what makes them start to think. The pause is your confidence, right? So don't be afraid to just be quiet and let them, you know, mull it over. But I never give them a price over the phone either. So remember, all of this stuff is just on the phone. And some people are like, okay, what time would you like me to come over there, blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason why I'm going into detail like this on the phone is because then next, I'll ask them towards the end, like, let me put like a pre-listing package together and I'll get that over to you. So that's why I'm trying to get all of this information over the phone. But then, are there any repairs or upgrades that you have done or need to do before you get on the market, or that you know have to happen but you don't have the time or money to invest in that? Because that's gonna help us with pricing. Because if you know their carpet is all tore up, or they have problems and holes in the wall and they don't wanna fix it, well, you're not getting here because now the buyer has to come in and do all of that stuff. So you can say, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the pricing when I get there. I have to physically see the home. Your goal is to get into the house and see it, because otherwise we're just giving them numbers. We don't know. We don't know how clean they are. We don't know if they've added upgrades, and then they might have put those really nice plantation shutters on there 10 years ago, but they're falling apart because their kids pulled on them and now they're all broken. Just because he's like, we have plantation shutters. Awesome, but they're all broken. So I don't know, that's not gonna really add any value to us. So it's really getting into the property, right? But then I'll say, what upgrades have you done since you've lived in the property? You know, have you added a pool? Have you added, you know, when was the last time you did your flooring? When did you upgrade your countertops? When did you do your appliances, your ACs, your water heater? When was all of that done? Generally, the appraisers will give value. I think, is it like if they redo a kitchen, is it 3 years? Might be 5 years, but it's not much. So they put granite in there 10, 12 years ago, and they consider that still upgraded. Yeah, we're past granite, like that's standard now. So now we're looking at quartz or higher, right? So with that, you're like, okay, well, what have you done? And we put quartz in about 12 years ago, or granite in about 12 years ago. You're like, great, I'd love to see it. It sounds so pretty. And then when you get there, now you know, okay, well, granite is pretty standard, right? And granite, yes, it's pretty standard right now, but now we've upgraded to the quartz, right?
But
and
just a question on some of these, like, is it obviously it's reading the person because you're on the phone with them. If you're asking all these questions, can it sometimes be overwhelming for the person?
And it might be. They just thought it was going to be a quick phone call, but
right.
You're looking thorough. You're
okay.
like, I'm trying to put together a package before I get there because I know you're going to want pricing, but I can't give you pricing until I know what you have in yours, and then I can go look at that. That's why I'm not coming today, because I have to compare from what you're telling me to what they have, so when I get to your house, we can discuss that pricing. So if they're like, can't we just go over this here? Oh yeah, sure, if you want to wait and we'll do all this when I get there, we absolutely can. Just know that I won't have any idea on pricing.
Okay,
and
so
then
this
they're
will
like,
help
oh,
me
yes.
help you get a better price.
Yeah, right out the gate, out of the gate, because otherwise you're just going into a house blindly and you're like, okay, making notes and going, great, I'll get back to you because I didn't know what you had in here.
Okay.
So I'm telling them that, hey, this is gonna help me with the pricing, and then when I get there, I'm not really giving them the pricing either, because,
You wanna see it.
Yeah, well, not once I wanna see it, but once you give them that number, they can move on to somebody else. So I just give them a low and a high. Great, you know what? You gave me some information. Now when I got here, I came here today, I'm looking around, I'm taking pictures, I'm making notes, because I have another class that's actually doing the listing presentation, going there and doing it, and I show you how I walk around the house and what notes I take and all of that. And so, great, so you gave me some information, now I saw it with my own eyes, and I made the notes of everything I need. Let me go back, but right now, in your neighborhood, low is this, high is this. Let me go and compare where you might fit in with that. So at least now when you're going there, you're giving them a low and a high. So you are talking about pricing, you're just not giving them the exact number, right? And then you'll give them a couple of days, and then you'll say, hey, I'd love to come back by, have you talked to any other realtors, things like that, because again, you don't want to give them your pricing until they've made a decision. They're like, oh, we really loved how thorough you were, we want to go with you, yeah, come back by, we can do all the paperwork and talk about pricing. Awesome. That's the whole goal, is to get to that point. But, so then I always ask them, are there any repairs? What upgrades have you done? And then I'll ask them specifically, have you upgraded the AC units, and when was that? Because they think they put a 12 years ago, they put an AC unit in there, they're good. They don't last much more than that, especially in this Vegas heat. So, yeah, I know you invested in that, because they're $7,000 to $10,000, but that was 10 years ago. It's about due for another one. So we can part it out as they break, but if you're looking, for top dollar, at this point, you've got a 10-year-old unit.
Right.
So AC units, the water heater, the roof, the flooring, any exterior paint. Have you painted the exterior of your home? And they're like, no, it's fine. Well, that should be done every 5 to 7 years, because of the heat and the weather and all of that kind of stuff. But they don't think that. They're like, no. And I'm like, and your original owner? Yeah, that's okay. It's 25 years old. We haven't done anything. Which a lot of times it's fine. It just gets dull and, it needs a refresher. But that could be $5,000 to $7,000 right there, just painting the outside of your home. If it's a 2-story, even worse, So they don't think about that. But if you've already asked the questions and they've answered no to everything, now when you go to justify the price, just so you know, this one down the street, they do have 2 new AC units. They just redid the outside, and they have all new flooring, the outside paint, and they have all new flooring in there. So unfortunately, even though you're the same floor plan, you have some nice features, they have some nice features, but they have more upgraded and updated features. So this one's going to justify the higher price, so we have to price accordingly, beneath them, because the new buyer's going to have to come in and invest that money into the home. Then, so when you're asking them about the upgrades and stuff, why that matters, well, it impacts the pricing, it impacts the days on market, and it impacts recommendations, the recommendations you're going to give them. Like, hey, I noticed that you have all these shrubs outside of your house that you really can't get up to the walkway. I do suggest, or I recommend cutting those back, getting rid of all of this dead grass, whatever it is, putting more rock fill in there. People don't realize it, but those little pebbles, they just kind of disappear. And you just got a bunch of mounds of dirt everywhere. If they were to come in and dump a mound of rocks right there, spread it out, it just refreshes the front, and it might be just a couple $100, just to do that. But I don't go overboard with the landscape, because you don't know what the next person is going to want. Maybe, especially in the backyard, maybe they're going to want a pool or a spa or something. Maybe they want desert. Maybe they want a ton of grass. We don't know. So unless you're going to dump $10,000-15,000 into the landscaping, don't do it. Just fix what needs to be fixed. Make sure the sprinklers are fixed. Things like that. So that's why the recommendations, all of this stuff matters, because you want to say, okay, well, do you know if your AC is working? Well, I could put a new one in, but the other one needs a motor. So what part of the house does that control? Are you using it at all? No, it's off. Okay, well, we really need to get, that going. So why don't we, work on that first before, don't rush to listing it. I mean, sometimes they're like, I got to get on the market at the end of the month. Great, but there are things that you need to do, because they're all going to come up. So we're going to list up here, then we're going to get a repair request, which is going to list all this other stuff, so your bottom line is here. And my thoughts are, if you know that this light switch doesn't work, and this one is a little broken, and go and fix that stuff first, so then that way you don't have a huge repair request of all of this other stuff. Just the main things that are really wrong, and you can kind of figure that out with adjusting. But I mean, if you have a summary report on your repair request that's got 47 items, and they're little things, it just looks bad, you know, like it just looks like, okay, they haven't maintained anything. But if you fix all those little things and it's just the 4 or 5 larger things, okay, yeah, let's try to negotiate on that pricing. Whether that's giving them a credit back, that's having you guys fix it before, you know, it closes, or you just reduce the sales price. But you're gonna try to reduce it. A lot of people just think they're gonna put their house on the market, and that's it, as is. It doesn't really work like that, because I always remind them, well, when you're going to buy a house, would you buy a house that's just like they just dumped on the market? No, you're gonna want these things fixed too. And rightfully so, you're paying a lot of money for this house. They have the same mentality. So right now you're a seller, but put the buyer hat on for a second. If the roles were reversed, would you wanna walk into all of these things that need to be repaired? So then I go on to the mortgage. Ask of their mortgage information, and let's say, is this paid off, or do you have a mortgage on there? Oh, we have a mortgage. Okay, do you just have a first, a second, a home equity line, HELOC? What are we dealing with? And then they'll say, oh, I just have a first for this amount. Okay, great. Is that your current statement? Did you see that? You know, like, what is that? Because if you're asking a wife that doesn't pay the bill, and she'll say, oh, we owe $300, and the husband's like, no, we don't. You know, like, they're not on the same page. But again, we can cross that bridge once we sit down in front of them. But again, you want that information over the phone, because you want to do some kind of a net sheet when you actually go and you're there in front of them, right? So if you have that ahead of time, it's best that you get it from them. So that way, if it's wrong, well, those are the numbers you gave me, right? And then ask them if they have any liens on their home, on their property. Mechanics lien, HOA lien. A lot of people get HOA liens, and it's for, they didn't pull that weed, and they've got 3 letters and they still didn't pull that weed, so now it's $100 a day or a week or like something crazy. And they're like, for a stupid weed, you know, I get it, but we have to get that cleared ahead of time. We had another agent that has, the house is 2 years old, and when you buy a new build, the backyard is supposed to be done and completed within a year, and he never did it. So he submitted for plans, and then he never did it. Now he wants to sell his home. But he already has a letter from the HOA, and it was on the demand that says the backyard is required to be done. So the new buyers have to be aware that once they move in, they have to get this done, you know, because he didn't get it done. So that, you know, backyard could be like $10,000, like that's an expense for them. So something like that. So he isn't getting fines yet, but he's getting letters already because he never completed it. Some of them have fines because they stopped paying, or they just didn't pay or fix the whatever infraction that they had with the HOA. But also ask them if there's any tax liens, or if anyone else, is there anyone else in this that has something that you have to pay off regarding the home. And that can also be a hotel marker.
Huh?
Yes. So here's the thing is I had one probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And I was representing the buyer, and we made the offer on the home, and then we get the preliminary title report and all of that stuff, and it says he owed $125,000 to the Wynn Hotel. So when he didn't pay his marker, the Wynn put a judgment against his house. Yes, which is fine, he had equity in there, no big deal. But you want to ask them up front, is there anybody else you owe on this property? I mean, this is a little more just for Las Vegas, but it does happen, because you could go down to any of the hotels and get a marker, you know, and then just take some money out, and if you don't pay that back, they're going to start attaching your assets. And as long as you've got money to pay that off, it's probably why he's selling it, because they were wanting to collect on it, and he, you know, didn't have $125,000 just to get one. So yes, it happens. So you're going to ask them that kind of stuff, and then they might not tell you that over the phone, but now you've put it in their head. So then when you're there in front of them, you're going to ask them again, is there anything else, anybody else that we owe, that we have to pay off out of this, because I'm trying to make you a net sheet so you know what you end with, what your expenses are and what you end with. But if I don't know about it, I can't include it in here, so those numbers are going to be off, and then they start opening up. But I like to just let them know ahead of time, so then they can think about it over the next couple of days, and then when I get there, oh yeah, I forgot about this and this and this, right? But why the asking that mortgage stuff matters is because it's gonna avoid surprises at escrow, is gonna determine the net sheet accuracy, because they'll tell you, well, you told me I was gonna net $250,000. Yes, but remember, you didn't tell me about that, so I wasn't able to include that on there, right? And then it identifies short sale potential earlier than later. And sometimes what happens is, they're like, okay, I'm really close, but I think I can sell it and break even. And then you start doing the numbers, and then you're like, okay, well, if we don't sell it for this price, then anything below that's gonna that short sale, and you can either, pay it at close, or you have to ask the bank now to sell it short. So you wanna let them know all of that ahead of time. Like if it's only like $3,000 or $5,000, like, can you find that at closing? Because if you do a short sale, it's gonna ruin your credit for many years. You're not gonna be able to buy anything else or whatever. Is there any way you can pull that money out? We'll go as close as possible, but that might go up or down. I don't know, But you let them know. But then also, if they have solar, ask them, is it paid off? Is it a loan? Is it a PPA, power purchase agreement? It all matters when you're doing a transaction, because there are some buyers absolutely do not want anything to do with solar. And other ones are like, sure, I don't care. But if it's paid off, it matters about the warranty, and then what goes with that, and how old it is. And they think they put $40,000 of solar panels on there, and they paid it off. That's $40,000 more, their house goes up. And it is not. It's just like a pool. It's gonna save them on the power bills, but that was for their enjoyment and their little power bills. But again, they're paying less each month, but then they're having to pay off those solar panels. So they don't usually take them when they go. That's a whole nother class. But with that, what they don't realize is if it's a lease or a PPA, there is zero value to that. So the appraiser's gonna come in, they're like, well, I have solar panels, that should have at least added 10 or 20,000. Unless they're paid off, there's no value. And then even if they're paid off, they have to be under so many years old to have any kind of value. If they're more than like 5 years old or something, there's no value to them. So it's a tricky situation. I think solar's good, but it's not for everybody. I don't even personally have it on my own home. But it's good in some instances, but other ones it really takes a toll, and then they can't sell their home, and because a buyer comes in and is like, I want the home, but you got to pay those off. I'm not taking on that debt. So it's a little tricky, but you're going to ask them. And if they do have solar, you're going to tell them, I'm not going to list this home until you give me that agreement. So make sure you dig that up, okay? So when I come there in the next couple of days, make sure you have that and make a copy for me. If not, I can make a copy and give it back to you, but I will need to read through that. Because they are just like if there was a trust, we'll need to see the trust, because we need a copy to give to escrow. And they don't think any of that. They're like, it's in a trust, and then they're just gonna sign. That's not the case. We wanna make sure everything's clear with escrow before we go under contract, before I even list it. I get all my ducks in a row before I list anything. So if it's a trust, an LLC, if there's solar panels, if anything, I need all of that before I even hit the market, right? And then I like to ask them, okay, so now, what are you looking for in an agent? And I do this on the phone, because then that way I can prepare my listing a presentation towards what they're looking for. And they're like, well, you know what? We just heard some good things about you. We were looking for a fast sell. We want somebody that's experienced in this neighborhood. And so now you got, okay, here's the zip code. Let me just tell them about all the properties I sold in this zip code. It doesn't have to be specifically in that neighborhood, but where are you going to connect with them? And then I always ask them, are you going to be interviewing other agents as well? Or, have you set any of that up? And some people don't like to ask that, but I want to know, because I'm going to bring everything. I'm going to do it all in color. I'm going to do show them what I do as opposed to what other agents might do. And so it kind of helps me when I'm doing my listing presentation. Let's see, if they say we're interviewing other realtors, and I'll say, okay, awesome, when do you think you guys are going to be ready to make a decision? Just because I don't know how long, I can give you comps and things about right this second, but if you aren't looking to make a decision for 2 or 3 months, it kind of affects the pricing. And really what I'm trying to find out is if they're working with other realtors, right, and then, how much time I have. But they don't need to know that. I always throw it back to how I'm going to look at the numbers, because the longer wait can kind of skew what I'm going to present to you. So, and then I say to them, I like to send you a pre-listing package of what we will discuss when I come to your house. That way you know what to expect, and it gets most of this stuff out of the way right now, and so I'm not gonna be at your house for 3 hours. You know, an hour or less, that's what I'd like to do, so I'm gonna prepare this package just for you. So I'll get that over to you. It's a little bit more condensed version of what I do when I come to your house. And I tell them, I'm gonna send over this, and it's gonna outline what we're gonna discuss. It positions you as one, being organized, okay, because you've already got everything in a row. It eliminates any surprises, so then they know what questions to ask you, and then it pre-handles objections. Oh, well, she already does this. Oh, she does it. She says she's not gonna do this, you know, and then it saves time at the appointment. I have gone with newer agents, and it's 3-4 hours, and I'm like, what are we doing here? You know, because they let it go away, and then they're like, oh, look at my ferrets, and no, guys, this is business. Let's sit down, and you can take that listing class that I do. I'm very methodical about, okay, where can I put my bag? I wanna sit here, can we sit at a table? Okay, let me walk around, make my notes. I'm getting my stuff done. I'm in and I'm out. Because the longer you take, and they think agents think they're befriending them, but the longer you take, the less likely they're gonna use you, because they're like, every time I call them, it's an hour-long conversation. Every time she stops by, it's 3 hours. Like, it's too much, it's taking too much of my time. I like to be in and out, make sure, do you have any other questions? Great, call me if you need anything. And I'm out of there. I can show them that I'm really thorough with what I do, and I don't have to take up most of their time, right? So, those are the questions you're gonna ask before you even start preparing for it. Now, when you go to prepare, pull the tax record and make sure who you're meeting with is gonna be there. And you can ask them that as like, hey, I haven't told your tax information yet. Who's on the record? Who's on the deed? And if, oh, it's me and my husband, great, I'll need you both there. When's a good time to set that appointment, right? And that's what you should do. I forgot to put that in there, but you ask them all the questions, who's on the deed, and then say, great, when will you both be able to meet with me? Because I meet with both of you at the same time, because you both need the information. And then they're all, we're not available until Saturday. Great, Saturday, how about 1 o'clock? Is that work? Okay, great. Set the time right there, then get off the phone. Now you're prepared. You're gonna pull the tax record and make sure you're meeting with the people that can legally make the decision. Then you're gonna, yes?
Say the other person it's a couple, and the person's military and he's overseas. Do you offer to set up a Zoom call?
You can do that. You can say, do you have the power of attorney to sign without him?
Okay.
Or her, or whatever. But yes, you can do, that would be awesome. Say, hey, can you do a FaceTime while I'm there? Is it, because I'd love for them to be part of this as well. And if they're like, nope, I'm the decision maker, I have a power of attorney to do everything. Because a lot of times when they're military, they're like, you at home, handle everything.
Right.
So, they usually don't care, because it's not, they're not emotionally attached because they move so often. Okay. So it's just like, yep, set it up.
But it's okay setting Zoom for someone else.
Absolutely.
And you're both. Okay.
Sometimes they just don't, the military person doesn't have that much time to sit on a Zoom. Because
or even if not military, let's say.
Yeah, out of state, or they've already relocated, and then the other spouse is there.
Right, finishing up.
Okay. You're gonna do whatever you can possibly do to try to get them both there, because you don't want them to, say it's the wife you're meeting with, and the husband's like, because he's already moved, and he's like, I didn't know about that. I would have never done something like, you don't want to run into that later on down the road. She said it was okay, but I never said it was okay.
Right.
And now everything's halted, right? So, let's see. You're gonna Google the property for a number of reasons. I Google the property to find out if there's anything bad that has happened. If there's any crimes that have been committed, reported, whatever. I also Google the property because it'll give you that you can hit the little arrow and it'll zoom you around kind of the neighborhood. Don't know how old those are, but it kind of lets me see what we're dealing with. You can zoom out and see if there's, if it backs up to a Walmart or a gas station. That's gonna affect the pricing, right? But it also gives you a picture, kind of an outside. If it was already listed, you could kind of see what it looked like on the inside before when they purchased it. Then I look it up on the MLS, and you can only do this if it was already listed on the MLS. So we'll get some agents that will take a listing, and somebody bought the house new 2 years ago. Well, it's not gonna be, because now this is the first time they're gonna resell it, so it's not going to be on the MLS. MLS is only for resales. You will not see new homes on there unless a new home builder hires an agent to list the property because they're having a hard time selling it. but otherwise, MLS is just for resales. So I will look it up on the MLS if that's the case, and then I can check the history, how long it's sat, days on market, if any upgrades that agent might have said that they didn't tell me about, you know. Then I'm gonna pull comps to compare the homes and determine the pricing. I'm gonna pull the comps from the neighborhood. And again, if you guys need help with this, always just come to me. I get 20-year agents that are like, I can't find comps for this property. Then we just sit down, we all try to figure it out. We're just kind of guessing, you know, with the information that we get. But if you get one of those off properties that nothing's selling in the neighborhood, or it's no HOA on 2 acres, and you know, they're not all over the place. So you have to go a little further out and then just go, okay, what are they doing over here? And what are they doing over here? But generally, you're gonna wanna stay in your neighborhood. And if you can't find like for like, there's a whole comparable class that I have, the CMA report, so you can watch that as well. But you're gonna try to stay in your neighborhood, and if you can't, go to the next neighborhoods, and if you really can't find anything in that same square footage, and you know, stay like for like. So 1 stories, just look for 1 stories. If it's a 2 story, don't compare 1 stories with the 2 stories. So you have to go further out, so then I start a half a mile radius, and if I still can't find anything, I'll go a mile radius, and I'm trying not to go over the main streets. Like if it's Jones and Decatur, I'm gonna try to stay in between Jones and Decatur. I'm not gonna go on the other side of Jones or the other side of Decatur. That could skew everything. So you're gonna pull your comps, and then get with your title marketing rep to pull a no before you list, right? And it's just some information about the property and the neighborhood and all of that good stuff. But it'll tell you open permits, any liens, any HOA information, and then a preliminary title information. This is not a preliminary title report. The preliminary title report is generally ordered 5 days after you open escrow, okay? But Rock Title, because we work very closely with them, they will pull that for us as well. It does cost them money. So that's why most other title companies will not pull that for you. You have to have an open escrow with them before they pull it. But Rock Title does that for us, and it's a deeper dive into anything that's going on with that, you know, any liens and all that good stuff is in there, right? And then I want you to try to drive by the property before you go and meet them. If you've scheduled the appointment 4 days out, in the next 4 days, go by that property and take a picture. And it's okay if they've got a car in the driveway, because then they're gonna know that you came by. You were pretty thorough, and they're like, oh my gosh, because you're gonna put that on their CMA. And it's like, oh, you were already over here? Yeah, I came by the other day. I can't give you information without driving through the neighborhood. You know, that's why I couldn't do it within 24 hours. I have to get there and see things. And then they're gonna go, okay, so if they are interviewing other agents, you've already drove through the neighborhood. You've looked, you've investigated everything. This person just pulled it off the MLS. Now, can we do that? Yeah. I always tell agents, do not use other people's photos. But when you're doing like a CMA and it's just going to the homeowner, you can pull it off of Zillow or the MLS or whatever, just, you know, screenshot it. Because it's just going to them. You're not publicizing it anywhere, right? You just can't use other people's photos to relist a property and say, I'm gonna use their photo. You can't do that. But I always say, when you're making a CMA report, you wanna have a picture of the front of the house. So sometimes you can't get there, and sometimes there's no past pictures. It is what it is, but do your best to do that. Try to go by, because they're so super impressed by just doing that. On your way home from work or whatever, stop by, take a quick picture, drive through the neighborhood so you know. And then when you get there, you start asking them questions. You know, I was here the other day, and I noticed 2 doors down, this and this and this. They're like, oh, okay, so she was already over here. Yes, I'm very thorough in what I do. Those little things, guys, are what wins you these listings over the other agents. Because most agents are just like, oh yeah, here, I'll take it. This is what it says. They can pull what it says. Like, they're hiring you to do the proper job that they're not licensed to do. Then you're gonna make a CMA report, and you can do this through Matrix or RPR. I personally like to do Matrix. It's quick, it's easy. RPR is a little fluffier, but I have a harder time with the comps, the specific comps on RPR, but it's a great system. I just tend to use the MLS, and I get to pick the ones in my little subdivision, and I'm good to go. Click, 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 and then print. And it's super easy. I upload my pictures, and I'm good. Print it in color. At Realty One Group, we give you free unlimited amounts of black and white and color printing, so there is no reason you should not print this in color. And a lot of times, like, I didn't have time to drive all the way to the office. Then you go pay the $14 at Office Depot that it's gonna cost you to print the 42 pages, because that's what I used to do, well, had to do sometimes. If I couldn't make it to the office. always print in color, and I'm gonna tell you, I won a listing, cause one guy came in before me, printed off the same CMA, well, they're always a little different because of the properties we pick, but his was black and white and mine was color, and they're like, if he can't even give us this in color, what is he gonna do? Absolutely, everything he's gonna do is gonna be on the cheap. It cost me $14 to print that for them. Did I tell them that? No. I say, oh no, I only print in color. That's it. It's expensive, but I print in color. And they're like, yeah, great, found my agent. Really? You picked me because I print in color? Yeah. It's those little things that you don't know what's making the decision for them. But then, yeah, right? Thanks. And then you're going to get a seller's guide from the marketing rep. And you're gonna give that to me. You're gonna build your package of stuff. And the seller's guide, staple your business cards on the inside. And it just kind of, you don't need to go over it, but it's a leave behind. And they like that stuff. There's some realtors that'll walk in, they have nothing. There's no presentation. They're like, let me just see your house. Okay, great, yeah. I mean, I think I can't tell you how many do that. I've asked a 20-year agent, you know, what's your presentation? I've never made one. I just get referrals. Okay. Okay, and that's great. But then when you don't know these people, what do? You know, so you just be prepared. And that's 90% of the game. Just, you can fake it as long as you look like you're prepared and you know. But you have all of us behind you, and they don't know that. But just, if you can get in front of them and fake it, and then we can help you with everything else behind the scenes, that's it. But it's really about posture. Be genuine. Don't be fake in the sense that, like, you're trying to be something that you're not, you know. This is who I am, and some personalities don't get along, guys, and that's okay. You're not gonna win everything. Don't take it personal. I would much rather find out at the beginning than have to struggle through a whole transaction and then it fall apart at the end because we just do not see eye to eye. I wasted so much time and energy, right? So I teach posture on just be confident in what you're saying, because you're like, well, I mean, yeah, you could do something. I mean, I'm gonna, you know, they just lost all the trust they had in you. But I just say, no, these are the documents I have everyone sign. I'm just gonna put it right here, and so you can look it over, and then I'll have you sign it at the end. I can explain it to you, I can do whatever you'd like, but it's just holding yourself to, you know, the posture is it. Just have confidence in yourself, and then they'll have confidence in you. And then just know we're behind you. There's nothing to be afraid of, because you really can't mess it up, because we're all here. And if you tell me I'm going on a listing presentation tomorrow at 1 o'clock, great. I'm gonna, you know, put it on my calendar, and I'm gonna block that time. So I'm gonna say, okay, if you're there and you need to text me anything or call me while you're there, you know what? That's a great question. Let me call my sales manager and see if this matters and if that's something we have to do. You can call me, guys. And if I know you're in that presentation, I will make sure that I can answer that phone call because I know you're in the middle of a presentation. So just let me know what you're doing and when you're doing it, and I'm more than happy to help you through all that. And then I think that's pretty much it. So do you guys have any questions about how to prepare for the listing, and then the questions you need to ask, and then what you need to do to put it all together? Because the next class is going to be assembling your listing presentation and what you have to do, what you include, because we have a digital one and I do a paper one as well, which you should always carry just in case the digital doesn't work, because it happens sometimes. But any questions on this portion of it? No? Perfect. Well, thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, let me know. Anybody watching, reach out to me. I can give you the link and then the handout, and you are all set. So see you guys next week.